In the last lecture, we looked at a model for describing an income stream from a mature product, something whose sales had stabilized. In this lecture, we're going to look at something called the logistics function. And I've got the formula for it here on the left, and I've got the graph of it on the right. And what really, just from an algebraic perspective, makes this function interesting is that it manages to have two horizontal asymptotes. It's got that upper one, and it's got one down at y equals 0. So these parameters here, the L parameter is an upper bound on the function that is actually this asymptote here. K describes the rate of increase, how fast or slow the growth is, and that x sub 0, it's often described as the midpoint of the function. It's this point right here, what in calculus terms we would call the function's inflection point. So this logistics function gets used in a lot of different scenarios. It's used in biology, for example, to describe the growth of a population that has some kind of resource limitation. So the population has an effective upper limit. It's used in economics to describe the rate at which some kind of innovation spreads through a society or an economy. And it can be used in finance and sales to describe the incoming sales from a product that is newly released on the market. You can kind of visualize what happens down here. In the initial release, there's not a lot of people that know about the product. You get early adopters, people who are really involved in whatever this industry is. And if you think about an Xbox, for example, there are certain people who have to go out and buy that game system right when it's released, right? But there's not a lot of those, right? So the sales are slow in that initial period. And then you get into this middle range here where um, people start to catch on, right? The broader market starts to become aware of this product and they're hearing good things from the early adopters. And that's when sales really start to pick up at a significant rate. And then eventually, all of the people who are going to purchase this have purchased it. And what we're looking at here would be something for a consumable product or something where people have to come back and buy it again on a regular basis. A snack product, for example, would fit into this category. So there comes a point where sales level off. Everybody who likes their product has become aware of it, and they're making reasonably regular purchases because they've decided they like it. For a non-consumable product, you would see the sales would eventually start to dip down and level off at a third asymptote down here. And that's the point where everybody who has bought the product, everybody who wants the product has bought it. But there are still some new sales from people, for example, who broke their system or need to replace it for some reason. And kind of thing about that game system, younger people who are coming into the market, they're getting to the age where they're interested in that sort of thing. So you are getting some new sales, but they're at a reduced level. So we're going to stick to this version here, where the sales eventually level off. We're going to want to answer all the same kinds of questions that we talked about when we're talking about a constant income stream. So I have a specific example here for us to look at. Right, we're going to start with this income function, P of t, and t is going to be in years, and we're being asked to find the expected total income over 3 years. Good, so that the units are consistent with the time, so we don't have to worry about that like we did with the previous lecture's example. So now remember, to find the total income, all I have to do is integrate this income function. Right, so if I try to do that, I get the integral 0 to 3 of 1 million over 1 plus e to the 1.5 t minus 3 dt. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. There's going to be a couple interesting little twists to this. First, I'm going to do just a quick substitution. I'm going to let u equal 1.5 times t minus 3. And that's going to turn that e to that kind of weird exponent into just e to the u. So this means du is 1.5 dt. So dt is du over 1.5. And I'm going to do one other little substitution here. I'm going to bring that million out in front because it's a constant. And it's just going to sit there until the very end when this turns into an arithmetic problem. I really don't want to keep writing a million over and over and over again. So I'm also going to do one other little thing here. I'm going to let m equal a million. Right? So now my integral becomes m over 1.5 integral 1 over 1 plus e to the u du. And what are my limits here? I know if you watch me do these substitutions, usually I would just leave it as 0 to 3 and just switch all the way back to t's at the very end. But we're going to have to do several other steps here. So I think in this case, it might end up being easier if we go ahead and turn these t values, 0 and 3, into u values. Right, so if I do that, if I put, where do we start? With 0 in for t, u is negative 4.5. And if I put 3 in for t, u becomes 0. So this is the integral from negative 4.5 to 0. Okay, so far, pretty straightforward. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Right? I am going to rewrite this numerator. I'm going to make this m over 1.5 integral negative 4.5 to 0 of 1 plus e to the u minus e to the u all over this 1 plus e to the u. Right? Hopefully you're thinking ahead with me here, right? And you're seeing why I'm going to do that. So now I'm going to split this into two fractions. This is going to become m over 1.5 integral 1 plus e to the u over 1 plus e to the u minus e to the u over 1 plus e to the u du. And this is still from negative 4.5 to 0. Okay, this part is just 1. So this is m over 1.5 integral negative 4.5 to 0 of 1 minus, and now I'm going to do a second substitution. Right? I'm going to let v equal 1 plus e to the u. So dv is e to the u du, because you notice I've got an e to the u and a du here. Right now, I really shouldn't have put that bracket there. Let's take that bracket out because I'm going to split this into two integrals. This is 1 du minus the integral negative 4.5 to 0. And I am going to leave those as u's and not v's. If I try to turn these into v's, I'm going to get 1 plus e to the negative 4. That's a mess. Right? So now I'm going to go ahead and leave this the way it is. Excuse me. So this will be just dv over v. Get some brackets here. And I can do both of these integrals. This is m over 1.5 times u from negative 4.5 to 0 minus the log of the absolute value of v, still also from negative 4.5 to 0, because like I said, I'm going to switch this back, and I'm going to put that v back in there. So this is m over 1.5 u minus the log absolute value 1 plus e to the u I really don't need the absolute value at that point though, right? Because that 1 plus e to the u is always positive anyway. And this is going to go from negative 4.5 to 0. Now, if you very carefully do these substitutions, right, you put 0 in first, minus, then you put negative 4.5 in. Don't forget to convert that m back to a million, and you end up with, for the final answer here, 2,545,267, right? That would be total income stream that you can expect over the course of the first 3 years. And if you remember from the graph on the previous page, that's the growth region, right? That's where your growth is at its greatest. It's the time from the release of the product up until the inflection point, right? The point where the rate of growth finally starts to slow down. So continuing the same line of thought that we used in our first example, my next question here is, what sort of present value does this income stream have? So, and I did have to add a little more information, right? We're going to assume a 5% return compounded continuously. Well, we've got a formula for this, right? The formula, you remember the present value is the integral e to the negative rt times p of t dt. And so if we put our numbers in here, right, our value of r and our income stream function, this is 1 million. I'm going to go ahead and bring that out in front. The integral e to the negative 0.5 t over 1 plus e to the 1.5 t minus 3 dt. Now, this is a much harder integral to crack. In fact, if you go to any of the symbolic processing websites or programs that we talked about way back in the very first chapter here, and you enter this integral into it, you get a very strange result. You get something that invokes something called a hypergeometric function. And that kind of solution is well beyond the level we're at here. So this is a case where you simply cannot effectively, on your own at least, evaluate this integral, and that's fine because we do have those websites. So if you're in a situation where you're evaluating a practical problem, you don't have the option of saying, well, sorry, don't have the tools to do that. You have to give management an answer. You can fall back on those websites. So if I put my intervals in here, I'm going to go from 0 to 3, and you go to your website of choice. I did this with Wolfram Alpha. Then you get for your answer $2,379,400. It may actually not be $400. That's the end of the accuracy that Wolfram Alpha gave me. It actually said 2.3794 times 10 to the sixth. That is a little bit of a problem with these websites, especially if you're using the free version. You can't necessarily do things like specify a desired level of accuracy. So that's the answer that I'm going to go with here. So you may be asking at this point, well, if I'm doing a homework problem, what should I do? Well, I would start by trying to do it by hand, right? I'll always kind of start there and see if you can't figure it out on your own. And if you get to the point where you are just well and truly stuck, okay, then you can jump over to one of those sites. And I would start by asking for the indefinite integral. Right? Because sometimes you look at the indefinite integral and you say, oh, okay, I can kind of see now what technique I should have been using. And then you can go in and get the practice and do it that way. Or if you get something that is just leaves you scratching your head or has just some really weird function in it that you've never heard of, yeah, okay, then you can turn it into the definite integral and just go ahead and crank up the numeric answer. As a general rule, when I'm designing questions, I'll specify if I know that something is just not going to be doable at the level of that class by hand, I'll specify, okay, go ahead and use a technology solution to do this, so students know for certain where they're supposed to be going. Okay, so our last question that we've been answering with these kinds of income streams. What is the future value of the stream? Well, we've kind of talked about some of what's going on here before, but I really want to make it explicit at this point because it's going to help us out. The future value, this is the formula we derived. Then we did just a little manipulation with the exponents. We pulled that e to the rm out, and we were left with this. Right? But if you look closely here, this integral is just the formula for the present value. And we kind of hinted at that in some of the earlier problems. One way you could do this is you can just say, look, that the present value that we already calculated here is the amount you would need to invest to get the same result as you would get just by taking the stream as it comes and investing it. And that's going to help us out here, right? Because that integral isn't going to be any easier to do at this point than it was on the last slide. But because we have this value already, because we calculated it on the previous slide, I can just say, look, the future value is e to the 0.05 times m, which is 3 years, times this present value, which was 2,379,400, which my calculator tells me is 2,764,468. And so that would be the future value of this income stream. For the next series of lectures, we're going to continue with business applications, but we're going to kind of turn away from the sorts of finance things that we've been doing so far and look at some related questions from economics that are based on the relationship between supply and demand.